So today we're going to be covering how to make trees on model railroads. Now, most people, they'll go out in the yard and find a branch or something and kind of decorate it up as a tree, or even go to your local hobby shop and buy a tree. That's all fine and dandy, but I like to work with my hands and from a budget, of course, and so I was finding something to make trees out of. This little guy here is how I used to do it years ago. Was I would get a piece of like extension cord and strip the insulation off and use the stranded wire and twist it around the base to make the trunk, and then branch it off and keep twisting it till I created a tree like this one. I learned that from my brother-in-law, Claire. He used to make these all the time, and I thought they were really fun. And they're great. They can be left as is or painted or put leaves on them. But today we're going to kind of get away from that because I have found something that works better for me. It kind of goes back to the days when I was working for our school district, and we had a kindergarten teacher named Miss Karyn who used to make a big full-size from floor to ceiling tree for her students to hang their projects on. And so I decided, well, that could work for model railroading and other things, including Halloween decorations and possibly Christmas, to make a tree out of paper. But I'm going to make them, small and in the same gauge as whatever model you're building, and that could be anywhere from G-scale on down to microscopic if you wanted to. This model here is a model of my grandma's house that I built, and she had these trees in her yard that were just, they were old and gnarly. I remember as a kid, I couldn't even put my arms around them. They were huge and as old as the house, probably as old as the town she lived in. And this is one of these cottonwood trees, so I wanted to try to model that, but to use that twisted wire, my goodness, I'd be twisting wire forever. So what I started to learn to do is the same way that Miss Karyn did, only a little bit smaller scale, and just use glue or Mod Podge and build the trees out of just twisting paper instead of wire. But you can see these trees here are really old and gnarly. I've built them as they were. But this is a model I built of my mother's house, my mom and dad's house. And here's a tree here that's just kind of an average tree. And you can see I've done the trunk the same way out of paper. And then the smaller trees that they had planted when the power company required they take trees out of their yard because they were into the power lines. And they had a deal where they'd replace them with baby trees. And I was able to twist those little teeny trees out of paper too, just doing this twisting technique. So today we're going to learn how to do this. And I'll tell you what, I don't see any reason why this couldn't be used for Halloween decorations or even Christmas if you wanted to. So, as you know, I'm the biggest pack rat there ever was. I'm constantly getting something from either eBay or Amazon, and the seller's always thoughtfully wrapping things up in paper so they don't break during shipment. And I never throw anything away. I have a box and a drawer that I keep stuff like this in because you never know, something like this could be handy for something. And so I hang on to all of this stuff. But what I'm going to do with this one is we're going to take this and make a tree out of it. And I'm going to show you a way to make a tree out of just a piece of flat this brown paper. So we're going to take this paper, and the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to look it over now. It would depend on your tree too if you want roots showing or not. So on this one, I'm not going to do roots, but we're just going to do the branches and the tree trunk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paper and about part way down, just start making paper strips and cutting down about halfway. And it doesn't have to be perfect. They don't have to be, try to get them as equal in size as you can, but they don't have to be absolutely equal. But I'm doing these about 1 inch apart. So about halfway down. And just keep going. And of course too, it's going to depend on the size of tree you're making, because as you can see, this one's going to probably be a little bit bigger tree. And when you think about it, it's sort of the same idea as twisting stranded wire, because you start with a common strand and then branch it off. And that's kind of what I'm doing here, because I have a common piece here and then the little branches here. So what I'm going to do now is get real messy, and I've used Mod Podge, Elmer's glue on a smaller tree, And I keep some water because if you're messy and get your fingers, you'll stick to your work if you're not careful. So you'll want to keep some water to keep your fingers out of it. So what I'm going to do is take a foam brush, and I'll tell you what, if it's a small enough tree, I've even used my fingers and used just regular Elmer's glue and put some glue down, and if it's a teeny tree. But on one this size, I mean, how much glue do you want to use? So I use Mod Podge, and I just get some on my brush and just start painting this tree. You know, get messy, and it's what it's all about, right? So we're going to get the tree trunk here, which will turn into the tree trunk, and start doing this one. And I just paint the trunk so far, not the branches just yet. That will come in a minute. Now what I do is just start rolling this up like so. Just roll it maybe about halfway through. Add some more Mod Podge because the stiffer it gets when it's dry, the better. So you can see I'm just rolling this up so it looks like a little cylinder. You know, add some more Mod Podge because, you know, sort of like plaster of Paris or anything like that, you want to have it well soaked, and then you'll see why I need my water here in a minute. So now I have something that looks like this. Kind of start looking like a tree a little bit. So what I do is I start twisting the trunk, and I try to twist it always in the same direction. And just keep twisting it. And you know, if you want a really nice looking tree, just give it some twists, you know. But sometimes you might want a real gnarly tree, so you're going to kind of give it some more twists. And again, having that paper a little bit moist kind of helps so it doesn't tear or break. So now you've kind of got your tree trunk, right? Now I'm going to take and start spreading some Mod Podge. And you'll want to have a good surface that you're working on that's washable, a messy mat or something down, so that you're not Mod Podging something you're not supposed to. And again, just the same thing on these branches. I start applying some Mod Podge to all the sides if you can get them there. And oh, it's messy. You'll get your fingers in a mess and it'll be just like kindergarten all over again. So we start getting some Mod Podge on all of these. Now what I do is I will grab some, about 2 or 3 of these at a time, right? Because as the tree starts out, it's got bigger branches, right? So I've got 3 of these together, and I start twisting these. Pretty good. You know, maybe I'll grab 3 more and start twisting. The thing to remember though is to try to keep twisting in the same direction. And you can start to see that the branch is starting to form. Let's see, grab 2 more over here. I'll grab 3, just for variation. Speaking of eBay, they're after me again. So then I have these branches starting out here. And kind of twist them up. So you can kind of see you've got the beginnings of a tree, and it's kind of floppy right now because it's going to need to dry. And it'll take probably, you know, a day or 2 to dry completely. And then on this, where I have like 3 or 4 together on that branch, I'm going to start twisting some more. Add some more Mod Podge. Like I say, it gets really messy. Sort of like working in plaster. And just keep twisting. Like I say, keep it twisting in the same direction. It'll make your bark look a lot better. The tree will go together a lot better. And you can kind of see it starting to look like a tree. Because it's wet, it just really wants to flop. So same on this guy here. Get him twisted. And as I get out here on these other branches, there's enough of the Mod Podge still on there. I'm going to keep twisting there. It's still coming through. So as you can see, I've got this upside down because normally our tree is going to be upright like this with the branches. And of course, these don't really look like branches yet. But you can kind of get the idea how we've twisted this paper. And like I say, you can do it any size that you want, all the way from a good piece of paper, you know, that's really twisting, to teeny, like I pointed out on the model of my mom's house, just a little itty bitty. Now, one of the things that I'll do as I'm making these, just to reinforce it, and always be so careful using this this kind of glue, because man, it if you're not careful, it will get everywhere and glue your fingers to your project. But the thin is like super glue. And what I will do is just put a couple of drops like on the tree trunk, just to kind of, it really reacts well with the Mod Podge and the white glue, and forms a kind of a hard surface so that it doesn't try to fall apart or anything like that, but it gives it some support. And you'll want to wait till that kind of dries a little bit. Let's see if I can add a little bit more here. Sometimes I get a little overzealous twisting the paper and it will actually try to tear, which actually just gives it character. But as these are drying, you'll want to have them kind of upside down so that they dry with that general shape. And then once they're dry, you can kind of position them. Okay, I think that's going to hold. All right, there we go. There's part of our tree. That's going to allow me, just make sure that crazy glue those dry before you get anywhere near it. You will glue yourself to your project. Been there many times. Now these outer branches, I'm just kind of twisting them kind of dry. You can add a little bit of Mod Podge once they're twisted, or even some white glue. Just make sure you twist close to your fingers so you don't tear the paper and rip it apart. But if you do, just try another branch. Trees aren't perfect. But just remember to always keep your twists going in the same direction. Yeah, just twist these. You see how close I'm keeping my fingers, so because yeah, the paper is tearing a little bit. So if it gets too rambunctious, I'll just add a little tiny bit of Mod Podge. And again, you'll want to keep your fingers clean, which is why I've got the water there. If they get too goopy and I'm really sticking to my project, then I'll wet my fingers down a little bit. Let's see. Okay, that one can go a little bit more. Okay, now it's starting to look more like a tree. You can kind of see that. If you get a droopy branch, just get it down there at the base, kind of wind it around itself, like so. So now you can kind of see it starting to look like an old, creaky looking tree, complete with bark and everything else. Just keep twisting these branches. Okay, there we just about have us a tree. Now what I'm going to do with this one, because we're kind of, this is just an example. I mean, you can mess around with this quite a bit. And like I say, if you wanted to do roots, you could also cut this down in here and twist out for some really interesting looking roots. And of course with the Mod Podge on there, it's going to be stiff. You let it dry overnight, and you can kind of, it'll be soft enough you can kind of bend it a little bit. Just like you made the branches here. So when I'm just about done twisting branches, let's get this one out just a little bit more, just to be interesting. And what I can do here is is just grab the scissors and cut that little flag off. And trim that little piece off there. And let's give this one a little bit more of a twist. You'll kind of get a feel for the paper too if it starts tearing or anything like that. So you don't rip it in half. And like I say, if you do, well, not a big problem. Just move on to the next branch. Add just a teeny little bit of Mod Podge on that guy. So I keep him twisted good. And what would be interesting with this too is you could, if you wanted to make some twisted wire, craft wire, if you really wanted smaller branches, what I've usually done is either use these for winter trees or spooky trees for Halloween, or I put the foliage, just in little blobs on the end for like the trees I did on my models. So on this house, as you can see, I've used foliage. These are just teeny, and I did the same technique. It's paper, just twisted. And then to make these really stiff, where you're dealing with something that fine, I did use the crazy glue. But be sure and hold it upside down away from your fingers, and then where it runs on there, make sure you got something that can drip onto, or it won't hurt anything, because this stuff, I've glued myself to my projects more times than I care to admit. But this I put the foliage on the same way, same with this tree here. And one of the things that we found, I can't remember where you said you got this stuff, but this is fun. It's kind of like elasticy. And I just cut off little tiny pieces. I'm sticking to it as we speak. But this is just a different type of foliage. We didn't know if this was going to work, but now it's kind of turned out to be one of my favorites. And I find just by plopping it on there, and kind of winding around, unless your fingers are all peely like mine and it wants to stick. But you can kind of wind it around your branch. When you get it like you want it, I usually put a drop of the thicker crazy glue on one of the branches and then let it set up, and maybe a drop or two of the super thin crazy glue to hold it in place. But again, make sure you're in a ventilated area, because you will have a reaction. It does smoke. So you might be just happy using the thick crazy glue.
I found this goofy stuff on Amazon.
Yeah, it's just...
And I was just looking for something that would substitute for foliage that didn't cost a lot of money, and this is really cheap.
Oh, I just love it.
And it's great. It's all sticky and springy, and it sticks to everything. I'll put a link in the description.
Right, because this stuff is wonderful. I think this works just great, because you don't want it on there too. Maybe if you're doing a spring tree or something like that. And of course, if you're into autumn leaves, then you'll want to do some other color. But that's one idea there, and that's what I've done with these trees here. Get a little bit more Mod Podge on that guy. You can see this is really a mess. It finally got me a messy mat underneath my work, because it is drippy and it is messy, so be prepared for that. Wear some old clothes or a smock or something like that. And you can see it's starting to look more like an old gnarly tree. Almost has a Harry Potter look to it. Now, one of the things you'll want to do with these once you have them put together is they have to dry. And I would suggest overnight, and possibly even if you can hang them upside down while you dry them, so that they dry nice and stiff. And to make sure that they do, ensure that they do dry real stiff, you'll want to make sure you give them an extra coating of like Mod Podge, and then just let them dry overnight. Now this tree, I'm thinking maybe we'll trim it off a little bit right here, because this tree, I'll just drill a hole in the ground to stick it in. You can kind of see there's the tree trunk. But he's going to just be a short tree, maybe a cherry tree or something like that. And then once this is all dried, another thing I do is you can spray them with a matte finish spray paint that's clear. We're rolling? Yeah. So you can see this looks pretty much like an old tree. It's kind of been trimmed of its foliage. But we left it overnight to dry to make sure that it's going to dry. And then I take just a little can of flat clear and just spray it. And again, you'll want to let this dry. But this just kind of helps seal it in. On the really tiny trees, I use more of that super thin crazy glue. But again, you have to make sure you've got it upside down so it doesn't run down onto your fingers and glue you to your project or spray paint you to your project. But this just kind of seals it and also makes it a little bit stiff. So there we have a tree.
Sweet.
Now, one thing that's nice about these, if you want to, you can add some paint. If you wanted to make it look more like a sycamore or anything like that, you can add a little bit of white paint, brushing it on, dry brushing it on, or just leave it like this because it really looks like bark.
I have an idea.
Oh.
Let's set it over by the blacksmith shop.
Yep. Only we want to stress that these are for indoor use.
Yeah.
You don't want to use these outdoors because they are paper, and the first rainstorm, they will cease being a tree. And of course, it's going to look a whole lot better with foliage on it if you want, or if you're doing Halloween and you want a real spooky tree, you could even spray paint this black or a darker color and maybe hang some little ghosts from it or little ornaments or something. But they make really good spooky decor for your haunted house. So just a fun idea if you're working on a budget like me and you run across things you just can't throw away and you want to put it to some good use. Well, now you know how to make a paper tree. It's cheap and it's fun, and hey, more fun to make than anything.
Well, I for one am going to try making a paper tree.
They're fun. You can have a lot of fun. It's messy,
Yeah,
but it's fun.
messy's half of the fun.
That's
If
right.
you're not covered with glue, you're not doing it
Oh,
right.
that's right.
And I've made many a wire tree,
Uh-huh.
and it sort of seems sort of like the same process,
It is the same process, basically.
but just different. And I love the final look.
Yes, it looks like very barky, gnarly looking trees.
And I'd like to try combining it with the wire technique.
Yeah, I bet you could do that.
Just kind of run the wires up into the branches and then out into the fine wires at the very tips.
Absolutely.
Anyway, it's a really cool technique, and I'm dying to try it. Anyway, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, you know the pitch.
There we are.
Please become a subscriber and set your notification bell so that you will be notified whenever we put up a video. And the easy peasy way to become a subscriber is by clicking on the upcoming blue button. Zoink! Right there, the blue button. Well, we're not sure how you found this video on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring, and we will see you here on Tuesday.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.